And we're back. Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's going on in the health and wellness world and what we've been coaching our clients through and into and above and beyond and rabbit holes. Mostly a lot of rabbit holes. Lots of coaching is a lot of rabbit holes. And so I am Coach Terry. I am here with my lovely colleagues, Coach Bridget and Coach Carol. I think Coach Josh may be joining us, and I believe Coach Shannon is on an airplane right now. So anyway, I'll go ahead and kick it off because we were talking before we jumped on about a bunch of different things, and they are all connected, all the things we're talking about. So I think I'll lead off with holy moly guacamole. Tomorrow is August 1st, right? We're more than halfway through the year. Fall is rapidly approaching, the back to school time. Heck, I was at Costco 2 weeks ago and somebody was already buying Halloween decorations. So fall, it does typically, historically, attendance does slow down a little bit in the summertime, but I will always say less attendance does not have to mean less revenue. However, what can we do with get people back in the fall, right? What are some marketing ideas? What are some things you can do, whether you want to do? And remember when we talk about events, we want to have we don't always want the same type of event, right? We want to have events that are like an attract event, a retention event. What's the third one? I always miss the third one. Attract, retain. Carol, you remember?
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, the wow. Yeah, attract, retain, and wow. And so the fall can be a great time for either or. I know Coach Bridget, and you can talk to this, has always done a member September for years. So that would be a retention event. And then another event that's always can be very popular in the fall is like a free yoga weekend or a free open house, not just yoga, but a free fitness weekend. That can be a good way to attract people in. And then also we were talking about too, pricing adjustments. So it could be a good time. I'm kind of weaving everything in here, but we'll talk it all. It could be a good time to do pricing adjustments, especially if you're going to do some type of open house that you want to get those prices adjusted before you have an influx of new people. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So definitely, Bridget, why don't you talk us through what you do for your for your member September? Because I remember when I first heard about it several years back, I was like, wow, this is a great idea.
Yeah. Member September, what I actually love about it is that it is sort of all of those. It is actually an attraction event too, with the way that we set it up, but more in the referral sense, I guess, which is all, they overlap, right? So every year we do Member September. I feel kind of bad talking about it right now because I just had a meeting with my new marketing hire that I just hired. And I was kind of ragging on Member September just because I'm so busy this fall. And Member September, I swear to God, you guys, it feels like every month is Member September. Like I turn around and it's Member September again, and we got to get all this shit together. But that is only because we're doing our YTT this fall and we normally do it in January. So it just feels like way too much right now for me. But luckily, I've got a great staff. And luckily, we've done it so many times that it's a lot easier to do. So Member September, what a fun thing to do, whatever kind of business you are. If you're a chiropractor, office, if you are a Pilates or yoga studio, if you're a physical therapist, whoever you've got regularly coming in, that's who you are celebrating this month. So it's a little bit of a wow event, and we turn it into a referral event too. So what we've done in the past is that every September, all of our members get free guests all month long. So they can bring a free guest to any class they want. They could come 3 times in one day and bring a guest to every single one of those classes. And then we have a great offer for those guests who come in, and we upgrade them for, whatever deal we do. This year we have to do it a little differently because we actually just recently made guest passes free for all of our members all the time, as long as the person is a new person to the studio. So we're changing it up a little bit, but I know most studios don't do that. So this is a perfect time to test out the unlimited guest pass thing.
Well, Bridget, may I ask
Yeah,
may I ask
yeah,
a clarifying question there? When you say free for, are you saying that they get as many as they want, or are you saying that they can bring anybody as opposed to if your guest passes? Because I just had a conversation with somebody about this. Because in some systems you can set up guest passes for new clients only,
yeah.
or you can set them up for new and existing. So can you what are you talking about when you say free for
Yeah.
everybody?
Yes, sorry, my members, this used to only be true in member September, and now it's true all year round, but they can bring as many guests as they have free guest passes all the time. The caveat now is that it's only unlimited guests if those guests are new to the studio. So we don't let someone just like bring their boyfriend every time to every class that
Okay.
they come
That
into.
was yeah, that was the
Yeah,
point because there's room for both. It's depending on
totally.
you how you choose to set up your guest
Yeah,
passes. So
yeah,
so thank you for that clarification because that can be different depending on the
yeah.
strategy that you're using. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Totally. And in Member September, historically, we've done, it doesn't matter if they're new to the studio or not, because it was like, in addition to being a referral event, it's also like this celebration for our members. So the only other things I'll say about it are that we just do a little bit of like a card for every member. We hand sign it. We do a big like wall with everybody's name. We do a different theme every year. So last year it was like every star in our galaxy or something. So like everybody had their own star on the wall. The guest passes, sometimes we do a little like merch giveaway. We usually do a raffle, and then we'll pepper in a couple like members only events through the year. Our members go crazy for sound baths, for anything that's sort of, we've got a couple of people on our team right now who are pairing up, and they have been doing this like craniosacral acupressure event that people are obsessed with. So we're doing a couple of those, but it's just a really fun event. And something else I love about Member September is that all of those new people that we get in September, just from like the back to school rush, they see like how fun it is and how fun it is to be a member at Honey, and how much we love our members and all that good stuff. So that's our member September. The only other thing I'll just say is because we get all those new guests in and like hopefully get guest passes and stuff, same strategy as we might suggest for like an open house. It's nice to do some sort of a retention event after member September, whether it's a challenge or bingo, something that sort of gets all those newbies incorporated into the community. Just the thing to avoid is to just get all this energy in there and then just let it drop and not do anything with it. So, oh, and
Oh,
I just want to say one more thing. I want to shout out my friend Danielle Barbeau, whose idea Member September was in the first place.
I was wondering where that came. Danielle, she's a community member and she's awesome.
Yeah.
I've been to her studios in Colorado. So yay, shout out to Danielle. One thing I love that you sort of just said really quickly, and out of all those things you said that I just feel is so powerful and impactful, the one thing that you do for your members, you want to guess what you think what that might be, Bridget? I know I'm putting you on the spot. You've said a lot. The
Do
one thing to me that just leapt out when you said it as like, that is amazing.
No, you tell me.
The handwritten notes to your members.
Oh, totally. It's so
That
fun.
to me is because I did that. I would do that every year with my members, and I would handwrite a note to each and every one of them, and I mean the tears down the face and things like that. So, and it goes back to we've talked about this before, and I did a webinar on this way back. God, I think it was 2022 on the art of giftology. There's a great book out there called Giftology about the art of giving gifts. And in there, the author really talks about, handwritten notes, things like that. So, and if some of you are thinking, well, I've got, hundreds and hundreds of members, keep in mind, it doesn't have to necessarily just be you. right? It could be your teachers, it could be your desk staff, it could be you, it could be if you have people that are like on the ops team, if you have a bigger team, you could just sort of divide it up and you could have one person write it and then a couple of different people sign it kind of thing. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's an arduous task, make it a that could be a really, really nice team event and to get. And I would suggest, and part of the art of giftology with that, I know I'm talking a lot about this, but I really feel that handwritten notes, particularly nowadays, can be so, so impactful, is don't do like a branded note card. Go out and go to the dollar store, go someplace else, and just buy a variety of different cute little note cards, right? And for everyone, yes, Bridget Pot in the chat. For everyone who always says, "What does my front desk staff do during class?" This is something the front desk staff could do during class, right? So when you're thinking, if you're thinking about this, yeah, get a variety of different gift cards, get your whole team involved, and then just start giving them out during, even if you're not going to do a member September, you can still do this. You can still do this at any time of the year, right? Because I personally, handwritten note, I think goes a really, really long way in today's world, right? Where everything we do is email, text, BM, this, that, and the other. And you get to practice your handwriting. How often do you get to do that these days?
I was gonna say, I don't even know if my team of Gen Z front desk staff even know how to write. So that'll be a fun thing to learn.
I actually read an article or heard something that their schools are now starting to go back to, they moved away from teaching handwriting, but now I've heard that they're going back to teaching handwriting, which I think is cool. So I remember my mother's handwriting, it was just amazing. She had such beautiful handwriting because back in the day, they learned how to do that. Anyway, enough of that. Carol, what do you think? What were some of the things you did or do or
Oh,
oh,
is it? Sorry.
it's
Okay,
really
myself.
Our Carol is also at the airport traveling, so if that was the flight taking off.
Oh yeah, that
Hey,
was very
Josh.
loud. We could hear everything but you, Carol.
Yeah,
But me. Great. That's what I was worried about. Sorry, guys.
that's
Uh,
okay.
no, yeah, this is the time a lot of my clients are getting prepared for an open house. And so that's the other kind of event that I think is, kind of takes shape around this time. And the more time you spend in preparation on the front end of things, the less time you have scrambling to do the thing, as it comes up last minute. And one of the, like, instead of a free event, some of my clients are thinking about doing like a $5 class or something to just get a little more of a vetted population coming in. So it's just maybe a little bit different take on the same kind of event, but just to make sure that those classes get filled, because I think some of the issues that people have had in the past is they have all these spots waitlisted for free, and then people just don't show up because it's free and they didn't have you know,
It's
anything. Oh, go ahead.
I would say funny you should say that because it's exactly what I had a conversation with a client yesterday. They just did an open house in July because that's their anniversary. And historically, it's been a really good event for them. This year, we're unpacking it. And, the owner's like, oh, it wasn't as good and blah, blah, blah. Now, this is where there's the feeling that it's not as good as, and then what your numbers say. And it turns out the numbers weren't bad. I mean, was it hugely more successful than last year? No, but it still was better than last year. And as I reminded her, because when you're in the like early days of studios and or your business, and sometimes that year over year growth in the beginning, you can get those really high double digits year over year growth. And then at a certain point, as you start to grow, the growth is not like 30, 40%. It might be smaller than that. I said, well, let's look at that. Last July, from July 2024 to July 2025 it was like 30, 32 or 33% growth. So I said, remember that year that was a big year where you had so given the fact that you had that much growth last year, the fact that you had this growth this year is a win. So that's why I always like to go back to, let's look at the numbers. And I said, and you still sold this many memberships and you still did this and you still did that. And she's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But to your point, Carol, is there were a lot of people that showed up because they do ClassPass. They had a lot of the ClassPass clients. Bridget, tell us how you really feel. I love that face. Because they have a lot, so they had a lot of ClassPass people that normally, not just the new ClassPassers, but existing ClassPassers, truly just to take the free class. So we talked about that, and that's exactly what we're going to make for next time is do exactly what you said, is charge for it. And then we talked through that. And again, this is a note for next time she does it, is then whatever the offer is, say, okay, if you get the offer, and we landed on, because she's in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we thought $15 for a class, which is like her drop-in's like 35. So we said then the offer would be, and of course this could change a year from now, but the offer then would be whatever the offer is like, hey, and if you sign up for our offer, we take that $15 off of it, kind of thing. So I think that is a really good idea to mitigate that. The looky-loos, the tire kickers, they have a little skin in the game. And then at least if they don't show up, you're not off that spot. Bridget.
Yeah, I was just going to give a quick little tip that we do for to avoid no-showers. This obviously depends on your staff size, like what resources you have. Like I am very lucky, I have a large front desk staff, so this is very possible, but we one of our pre-event tasks is like we send out a text to them right away when they sign up, like so excited, blah, blah, blah. And then in the 24 hours to 48 hours before the class, we send out a text to every single person and we say, hey, if you're not coming, just reply cancel or no or whatever, and we'll take you off the list. We get so many more cancellations that way, or like people actually canceling and way less no-shows. You know, you don't want to like put it in their head to cancel, but at the same time, no one's going to log in. Like very few people, especially if they're like new to your studio and not used to like the cancellation process, they don't want to go on, log in, figure out their freaking password or whatever, and then figure out how to cancel the class. It's just so much easier to be like, we don't care, just tell us. And then we keep track of those people too, just FYI. We make sure that we have a record of them because in most softwares, they just disappear once you can cancel them. And then we follow up with them repeatedly afterwards to get them into the studio. Anyway, that's it.
I was just going to add to that, like if we look at a sale, because when we're talking about an open house, a $15 class, an event, whatever else, this is a sale. So you are generating awareness, you're getting a lead and a booking, then you have to get a show up to the actual class, and then there's a sales opportunity afterwards. So if you look at it through that lens, it's not dissimilar to a lot of other sales things. And even with how we work, we do, a free momentum audit upfront, which is not a sales call. It is an audit of the business and a coaching call. And if we find that there's alignment and there's a need and we have permission, then we'll pitch at the end on what we do. And so, side note, if you haven't booked one of those, you should book one and come and let us take a look at your business with you. At the very least, you'll walk away with clarity on what to do. But we usually do a confirmation the day before. And when we started doing that, it completely changed our show rate because a lot of people would book and then just ghost us on that call. Maybe at the worst, we had spikes of like 50%. And total transparency on our business, like the cost of ads and effort that we put out there, et cetera, to get a lead, to get a booking is high. So when 50% don't show, it doubles that cost for us to just have a conversation with somebody in the first place. And so that show rate became something that was really important. To Bridget's point, the confirmation was like, hey, I've got us booked for tomorrow, but you haven't like confirmed the calendar invite. Are you actually going to show up tomorrow, Carol? Basically, like just a kind of blunt question. And as soon as we started doing that, show rate like doubled almost. It was exponentially better. And it's not even like different than an appointment reminder. It's like a psychological commitment piece. And then for the people who were like, no, I'm not going to make it tomorrow, the rebooking rate was higher too. We extrapolate that and put it into Pilates studio, yoga studio, service, fitness, wellness, business. It's the same thing where, like, hey, I've got you booked for tomorrow. Here's what you're going to need, blah, blah, blah. You can approach it from the conversational point of, like, I'm assuming you're showing up because you booked this class, and this is confirmation that that's happening. If that's not happening, let me know so that we can do something about it. It's like keeping it on the positive, but flipping it around where, yeah, you're basically confirming there is one studio that I know of that's Pilates reformer, and they've got six reformers, so it's very limited, and they don't usually do open house events and stuff because of this. It's like really hard to do. We put together an event, and this they took it even all the way to the extreme where it was like 24 hours before they would call or text or whatever it was to confirm. And they would say, like, if you don't confirm this by 4 o'clock tonight, we cancel your spot. And they did. And because there would be a wait list and someone else would fill the spot, and people did show up and were like, but I thought I had a spot. We're like, you didn't confirm. And here's the record of like an email, a phone, and a text or whatever. As disgruntling as that sounds like it could be, the thing that blew my mind was those people all purchased, like almost all of them ended up purchasing something. You're like, well, I might as well do your intro thing that you're pitching on this or whatever, because I really want to give it a go. And yeah, anyways, I feel like that in a weird way, this is customer service, but it's also like operational service for yourself doing this sort of thing. And these are the little efforts that at first you're like, well, I don't know. They booked the class. I'll either show up or not. Like, I don't have the time or the energy, or I don't want the expense or the effort to go and do this. But there's nothing more deflating than having a booked out class that's only 30% full on the day of when you could have filled it. And after you put all this effort into marketing advertising, for example. Go ahead, Terry.
It kind of along the lines, but not really, but kind of sort of, is when you said that, Josh, about they would, if you didn't confirm the booking, that they would cancel it. I one time went to a fitness studio, and their policy was for first visits was you have to get there 15 minutes before, because an element of the class was spin, right? And if you've ever taken a spin class, they've got to set the bike up for you and da 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 da. And so I was running late. I got there like, I don't know, 6, 7 minutes before, and they held to that. At which it was like operationally, again, it's like, hey, Terry, we're so sorry. And they send the reminder out 15 minutes before, the email, the text, all that kind of stuff. And I said, oh, I was running late. I said, well, we just don't have enough time to get you set up. I said, yes, exactly. Don't have enough time to get you set up. We want to make sure you have a positive class experience. So how about can you come back to this after, can you take the 4 o'clock class? And I did. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come back, because, what I liked about that, and it goes back to, we've talked about that before, is when you have policies and you stick to them. And that kind of goes along with what you said, Josh, is the policy is that you need to call us by 4 to confirm your spot, or we're going to cancel. Their policy was you need for your first class, you have to be there 15 minutes before. And I think that's where when you have policies and you stick to them, I feel you get a measure of respect in that way. It actually, and to what you said, Jonathan, in a weird way, it actually can help you sales wise, operationally wise. Josh.
I agree. It helps you sales wise, operationally. It helps a lot of things. I mean, no one wants to, people like to purchase things if there's a need and a desire for it, but we don't want to feel sold. Like, I actually do want the human interaction of a sale in many cases because I want clarity, and a good salesperson helps me find that without me feeling like negative pressure. And I don't want to feel afterwards that like I've been sold or duped or there's been a bait and switch or whatever else. And so both of those things are true. In a roundabout way, this helps sales because as soon as I start trying to convince you of something as a salesperson, or I argue against you and we're at odds in any way, you like smell the desperation. And it is a very clear, well documented psychological thing in humanity that, like, if someone is desperate in some way, we keep distance from them. It's like it's sketchy. There's a non-security that comes with it. It's not a comment on the person, it's a comment on the situation. It's in all of biology. I used to do sea lion research in Alaska years and years ago, and one of the major things we'd observe is if a sea lion was sick or had like a hook stuck in its mouth, it would isolate itself from the haul out and go to the other side of the island because all the other sea lions would kick it off the rock. They would bite it, they would beat it up. And then when it was not sick, it would come back. And so I weird. But anyways, I digress. The point being, if you don't have policy in place and then people learn right from their first interaction in first class with you and then all the way through that everything is basically negotiable and flexible, then everything you say is not serious. And then when you get to the sales part where you're like, okay, I needed this drop in, and what most people do is blah, blah, blah. They're like, yeah, I don't know, because you've come off like there's a tone through all of your other interactions that carries forward where you come off as desperate. And I don't want to purchase from somebody desperate because then as soon as I smell that you're desperate, I think you want to sell me this thing. I hold the power. And that means that you're not acting in my best interest, you're acting in yours. And now I don't trust you. And that's all subconscious, but there's nothing you can do to fix it in the moment. In many cases, it's hard. Versus this is the policy. We clearly communicated it like this. I'm very polite and compassionate. I have a solution for the fact that you didn't come to 50 minutes early to get your shoes set up and your bike and whatever, whatever. And sorry, you're not going into the class. People try to get upset at that moment. But if you hold your ground and stay positive and respectful of them, I think that that plays forward. Like if you look over the next month of time, how they interact with you looks wildly different, including in the sale. Because then when you're like, hey, dude, like you came 4 times, whatever, whatever, membership. Now we're talking about you participating. And I don't think you're desperate because I know because you proved it, you're willing to turn me away, is what's already happened. The note on this, there's a video I made recently, I don't think it's published yet, talking about policy because it came up in a different conversation. Lack of policy and vagueness in most cases is for your comfort, not your staff or your students. Policy, in most cases, if done appropriately, is for their comfort because it creates clarity. And usually policy, if it's perfectly aligned, also benefits all parties, you, the business, and them.
Yeah, I have said this on this very program before, but I it's so hard to do until you do it and you see how like what the results are. But this happens to me quite frequently actually when I'm not quite as involved in the day to day anymore of the studio, so less. But back when I was like the person handling client calls and complaints and all that stuff, if I used to be a total like bend at your will, do whatever you like, whatever. I'm just desperate to keep you kind of thing. But when I started to just like, for a number of reasons, I worked on myself, whatever the people who would try and push the boundaries and I held the boundary ended up being my most loyal, like longest time customers. Those people who like try and push your boundaries, some of them, yes, they just want what they want. They want to be complaining about everything and whatever. And some of them actually, I would say the majority of them actually respect it when you do stand up to them. One specific member, she's still a member like 5 years later. She was on her intro offer and she just kept complaining about every little thing. Like one class she had wanted to go to had been canceled for months and very clearly on the schedule canceled, I think because of a yoga teacher training thing. And then some other like small thing came up and she just complained every time. And the last time she complained, I was like, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. This just doesn't seem like it's, there's tons of other studios in San Diego that and I just, it doesn't really sound like this one's for you. And she was like, well, actually, I really do want this to work. So I guess I'll just keep going on the intro offer. And of course, she became a member and she's our most loyal client. And she never complains anymore, which is crazy coming from on 3 week intro offer, complained like 4 times and then has not complained one single time since then. And that is just one of a million examples. And it's, I know we've kind of veered off open house stuff, but this is the time when you have been a little slower and you're about to welcome a bunch of new people into your business, especially if you are doing something like a free yoga weekend and open house. And then suddenly for the next month after that, you're going to have double the class sizes, all these people who aren't familiar with your business coming in, disturbing, sitting in people's spots, like coming in late, all this stuff. This is the time to know exactly who you are, to hold strong to your policies and your boundaries, not for you, as Josh said. I mean, yes, for you, they make my life way better, but for the health and well-being of your clients, your current ones and those new ones who come in.
Yeah, I think 100% when you don't hold your boundaries, people don't respect you. And because they know they can get away with everything. And I hear actually I had a very interesting conversation with a client last week about this, about they do the configuration of the studio, and also, truthfully, for safety, is they lock the door, when class starts. But then she has some clients that habitually are late and they'll call, and she said, well, if you call us, we can leave the door open. And then it's just become this thing. And I said, and I said to her, I said, well, what's the policy? She said, well, the policy is we lock the door. I said, yeah. And then there's a handful of people that know that if I call, you're going to let me in. Now, what happens right now? She has a very small staff. I said, well, what happens in the future if you have that policy? And it's like, well, and then you're going to get the complaints. Well, Carol said, no, I can't come in because, we locked the door, but Bridget let me in that time. And so why, and then I said, so this is why you have policies, because as your team grows, and I see Carol smiling, I know she might want to comment on this after this, is when you have policies, it's easier for everybody. And I said, it's when you start having those exceptions to everything. I mean, yes, there are times when you clearly can make exceptions. That is your choice as an owner. But if you're doing it because you're fearful of something, if you're fearful that they're going to cancel the membership, do this, because I've seen that a lot with clients. They're so fearful to do something because, oh, well, I have this group of long-term clients that they always complain if I do something like this. And it's like, well, I feel like saying, yeah, because you allow it. Yeah, you allow it. Carol, it looked like you had.
Well, it just because if it's me, yes, I'm always going to stick to policy. I was always the hard ass at my studio. And but what it's making me think of is, it does relate back, I think, for sure, you're going to attract the right people when you have these policies in place. And if you do stick to it, I think that's where you create trust. Because if you say this is what we do, and then you follow through with that, then now, okay, they understand how you operate and how they should operate in your business. So it's that win-win. Everyone's been talking about it, but for your open house, if you have policies, stick with it. And yeah, and that's all.
I just putting some notes on this as you were talking, Carol and Terry. Like the thing about boundaries that when you say this, owners that we coach get this. Like any entrepreneur who's been in it for a minute, they understand this logically, but emotionally can they embody it in the business? And that's the growth that you have over time. When we talk about how you get gritty, there's a difference between getting gritty and strong and confident and getting jaded and just fucking burnt out. And so boundaries are how you avoid that, actually. You don't become jaded and burnt out because you're not constantly putting up with bullshit all the time. And you're protecting the things that matter. Because again, like if you open a business, this isn't any sort of a rule, but generally speaking, we don't plan like how long am I going to be in this business? What's whatever. If you just need a generic starting point, like 10 years is going to be 10 years. It'll happen faster than you think. Maybe it won't be, maybe it'll be less, but the timeline is bigger. So you've got to look at like this is a marathon, not a sprint. What you do today seems fine in this one-off case with this one thing because there's one exception. But then what about tomorrow? And then the next day? And then the other 365 days in a row this year times 10. And then you're like, shit, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And suddenly boundaries have some weight. What a boundary can do, I always think about this idea of a gift. Like if I try to give Bridget a gift and she just doesn't take the gift out of my hands, she's like, nah, who has the gift? Me. Like literally, I just hold the gift. That's the person complaining on the intro, where the boundary is the clarifying line of like, oh, I don't accept bribes. I don't accept gifts. I don't accept whatever. I don't have to take any action. I don't have to require you to take any action. I just don't accept this. And guess who has it? They do. And so it sounds like that was the transition that this client had gone through, where, like, what does a boundary do? It gives awareness for them, it creates clarity for your whole culture in your business, it builds confidence for your team, including yourself. And ultimately, when we talk about customer service and your core member base who are paying your bills every month, it's a gift to those members. Your boundary upholding to a couple of individuals, your boundary upholding to new people coming in, it's for the other members if you've got it right. And so it's one of the best customer service things, one of the best team leadership things, one of the best, I don't know, like awareness things for people without ever having to do anything that you can do.
Well,
And then Terry, to your point, it's like a boundary is not a boundary if you won't enforce it with consistency. So if you write a policy down in a boundary, but then you find yourself, if you have a reason to make an exception multiple times a week, you don't have a boundary. Like you call it whatever you want. You don't have a boundary, you don't have a policy. If I can come in and get a different treatment today with Terry as I do with Carol tomorrow and then Bridget the next day, you don't have a boundary in your business. It doesn't exist. And so I think one of the things that was really helpful with the client I was working with that was really kind of struggling with something with both staff and a client is we identified that although it seemed like there was a boundary, there wasn't one in place. And when we really audited it, what we found was that the boundary itself was maybe formulated like because we weren't using the word boundary, we were using the word policy, and the formulation of it was wrong. Like a boundary, if I have a boundary and Bridget's the other person in the equation, no part of the boundary enforcement requires Bridget to do anything. Zero. There is no such thing as I've written this boundary and then it makes my client or it makes my staff do something because I said so. That's not a boundary, that's control or an ultimatum. A boundary is I will enforce this condition no matter who you are or what happens with consistent, like that's it. If when the class goes in at exactly on time because we're punctual, I lock the front door, I don't there like yes, of course you can make exceptions, but just like that just happens because it's how we do things. Full stop, end of the story. And we don't answer the phone at that point. I don't have time to answer the phone. I got to teach the other 35 people in this class, you're not fucking special. But we're not going to teach someone that. We're just going to demonstrate it by upholding the boundary. I don't require them to do anything. We don't have to have a talk. I don't have to talk to you on the phone. I don't have to ask you to whatever else. I just do it and it fixes itself. That's a good boundary. So like the formula is when blank, I blank. If you want to write a really good policy that's boundary based, try writing it like that. When this happens, I do this. That's it. It's not if, it's not you, it's not you, like just when I. You rewrite half your policies that are more boundary driven like this. I promise you they get, first off, you're going to find ones that don't make sense. And secondly, you're going to realize like where you're soft because you are putting it outside of yourself being the business by extension too. It's the same thing with your staff.
I was going to
When
say
you're
staff.
late,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, when you're late, I teach the class and you go home. That's what we did. We had a requirement. The expectation is, and in the contract, you're at the studio, at the front desk, in your teaching gear, prepared to prep your room, teach, and give tours at the 30-minute mark before the class. Now, 30 minutes sounds long, but that was back in the day when we all just looked at the studio and no one did anything. So that was normal. Now it's probably 15 minutes. But either way, the point was like, it wasn't 29 minutes, it was 30 minutes. The boundary was when you show up late for that, I will teach this class and you don't get to teach the class. And it's something we never made an exception. And like the teacher phones, there was an accident, whatever, like, of course. But the teacher who just saunters in at 20 minutes before and there's students coming and going and I'm there giving a tour or whatever else, we're like, you're welcome to stay and help and you're welcome to take this class. You're not teaching this class anymore. Now I'm not teaching this class. You do that
You
one
and
time and it never fucking happens again.
that's a
Never.
that was a hashtag Terry's dad moment, Josh, because I was going to say hashtag Terry's
I
dad.
was channeling
You're
him.
channeling him because it took me a long time to learn this, but I had a curfew in high school. I think a lot of kids do. And my curfew was 11 o'clock when I was a junior, although my brother's was later, but my father said, well, you're a girl. And I said, Dad, that's not fair. And he goes, yep, life's not fair. Get used to it. Right. And so anyway, he was like 11 o'clock and he would be like this, my watch, 11 o'clock, my watch. And I would walk in at 11:01, pushing the boundary, and I would be grounded the next weekend. And it took me a while, but I finally got, and it's silly. It's a sort of a silly example, but it's the same thing. It's like, he never moved that boundary. That was a boundary. It's like, you're home by 11 o'clock or you're grounded the next weekend. And then I finally learned, oh, if I'm home at 10:55, I'm not grounded the next weekend. But I also want to say that was a funny story, but real quick, Josh, is about staff too. I had a client years ago where they had a staff member who was the most popular teacher. She was like the teacher of the teachers. And this studio had 2 locations. So she taught like a dozen classes a week. So and her classes were full and people really liked her. However, she kept pushing boundaries. She kept pushing policies. She was a bit of a cancer. And finally, the owner and the manager like, enough. And they tried to work with her, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, they let her go. She was amazed because she thought her shit didn't stink and that because her classes were full and so popular that they would never get rid of her. And then she had this little cohort because there was a lot of because it was 2 students, a lot of teachers, her little cohort that kind of worshiped at her feet. What happened after she was let go, the little cohort went up to the manager and was like, Carol, is there anything I should be doing so I doesn't happen to me what happened to Bridget? Because the owner was like, we're done. She's broken so many blah, blah, blah. So I know that's a long-winded thing. So Josh, but anyway, boundaries are important. Don't be on restriction every other weekend.
Yeah, with staff, this can be tricky because if you, I think the thing that happens with staff that you're describing that's tricky is if you don't have the boundary really clear yourself first, and therefore you can't set the expectation all the way, and therefore the staff can be in that gray zone where you're like, they actually have a counter argument here, then you kind of have to own that, where you're like, I thought this boundary was there, but then you realize, this is a condition or a situation or whatever that like, I don't have it written in a way, it's not clear enough where I can like really stand here and say, this is clear. Like I should be able to say to you, I know that this exists. I know it was communicated. I know that you understood it. And then this choice was made. How do I help you succeed? If I can't do that, then something was amiss. So sometimes the person who's pushing the envelope is helping you by giving you a lot of clarity around where you're missing something. And you can't be doing it out of fear and control, but it just helps you get clear. That said, the interesting part about it is like if you bend the boundary all the time. Oh, 11:01 is close enough. Like that sends a completely different message. One of the healthiest things I think I'll use the word relationship because this is across the board, but relationship with your staff, like if you're managing a team or the owner with your team and your managers or whatever it is, when you have boundaries and you enforce them and you want to be like, yeah, but I want to give compassion to my staff. I want to be able to be flexible, et cetera, et cetera. 100% yes. And the missing element is with the boundary comes the open door policy that we can discuss the boundary itself. And so if we have a boundary, I'm going to enforce the boundary relentlessly with very little wiggle room. 11:01 is after 11 because there has to be a line somewhere. Because if I let 11:01 go and then your sister comes and it's 11:02, well, but the 11:03 counts and now what? So the line is the line. On the other hand, it's a good analogy, Terry, because then at some point, I know what your dad's answer would have been, but theoretically, you go back to your dad and you're like, hey, dad, I totally understand this boundary of curfew of 11 p.m. I've been abiding by it. That said, I'm older now and there's things have changed and there's a new situation. Could we please discuss adjusting this boundary? It's prohibiting me in this way. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Your kid comes to you and sits down like that, like they have you wrapped around their finger at that point. You're like, okay, what do you want? You're like 2 a.m. You're like, okay, maybe not that far. But that's actually super healthy. That should be both ways. If you're talking now, extrapolate that to your staff. If your staff don't like a boundary, it's not the same thing as I'm going to push the boundary. When you try to say the boundary, they say some shit, they talk behind your back and gossip. That's the cancer we're talking about versus they come to you and be like, hey, could we talk about this boundary? I don't feel like this boundary is fitting for the culture of the studio. It's not fair to me in these ways. And I would like to discuss this, and here's a suggestion on what I think would be more appropriate. I can still say no to that, but I'll respect that. You have all my attention and time. And that might mean moving the boundary. That's how you build internal culture. If the whole team's like, dude, 30 minutes before is insanity. Well, none of us can get here. I don't even want to teach because of that. But we can definitely do 15 minutes unwaveringly. Even if I don't like it, I might be like, this is worth it. The whole team wants 15 minutes, not 30. Let's move the boundary. But let's make it as a decision and a commitment versus the cancer part of I'm just going to fuck around with it kind of thing.
Well, you want to hear the end of that story? I guess I have to tell the end of the 11 o'clock story because there was an end to that. Get to my senior year, I did get a little bit later. And then when I graduated, I was still living at home because I went to school for 2 years and I lived at home. And I went to my dad and I was like, yeah, I'm 18, about this. And he goes, you're right. You're right. You don't have a curfew anymore. And you have to start paying your own car insurance because you are 18 and you're an adult. And I'm like, okay.
Can I have the curfew back? Can I have I'll be in my 10. I'll be in my 10 and you pay the car insurance.
It was like, and it was just, he did that so smooth. And I was like, I still remember the conversation. We were on the deck. It was June. And I went to him and he was like, okay, yeah, you're right. You're an 18. You're an adult. However, yeah, based on that, I think it's time you start paying your own car insurance.
Foolish, Terry. Should have seen
know.
that coming. I should have seen ahead of you.
Yeah. Oh, he was, yeah.
I like it.
Brilliant. Anyway.
I like it.
Okay. Boundaries are good. I do think boundaries are good. Hey, this could be a segue into something in terms of boundaries. See, I'm going to connect this one is policies, boundaries, and how that can apply to other areas of your business, like pricing. Did I make a good segue there?
Great.
Because I don't know if you heard. Well, we talked about this before we jumped on, and I don't know if you heard us, Josh, is that oftentimes fall can also be a good time to do a price adjustment. And particularly if you're doing like an open house type event, and Carol has a client right now that they're doing this because she's like, well, I want to look at the pricing because if I'm going to do this open house and have all these new people come in, I want to have these new prices because the last thing you want to do is have an open house, a lot of people come in and then 3 months later decide to change your prices. Right. So how do you do that? How do you go about changing your pricing? Do you need to change your pricing? What are the things that go in with it? And so I think that's always a good topic of conversation. And first off, yes, you should change your prices. And ideally, if you have a small price increase every year, then you don't get stuck where it's 5, 6 years later. And now all of a sudden you have to go, oh my gosh, I really need to increase my prices, not just a little bit, but a lot. We ran into this like after probably like 23, 24-ish. Everybody coming out of COVID was just so terrified to raise their prices. And some people hadn't raised their prices in like 2019 and it's now 2024 kind of thing. So
We had businesses we were working with hadn't raised their prices since like 2015.
yeah.
We were talking about it in 2019 with them. We're like, people are paying 20% less than they were in 15, and then COVID and then everything else. But one thing that the pandemic did do for small business that was helpful is it was I'm going to say it like this, the punch in the face necessary for people to finally pay attention to some things that were already true. Like cash flow as a priority was already true, but then in COVID, it was like you all of a sudden really understood it. In 2019, and Terry, you'll remember that, like we were screaming from the fucking rooftops about digitizing your product and more hybrid studio stuff, et cetera, and nobody was touching it at all, not even a little bit, like 2% of the market. And then all of a year later, everyone. And it was like this big panic. And then the other thing was pricing. Those studios are charging $99 a month for unlimited yoga classes since 2010. That's my last studio in 2010. We charged $99 a month. And in 2019, they're charging $99 a month. We come out of COVID. But then they jumped to $150 a month, which was the correct price. But now a 50% increase, that's very disruptive. So yeah, it highlighted a few things and it showed like an industry level trend that was problematic and highlighted it so people could finally actually look at it and do something about it. To avoid that in your own business, periodic price adjustments, increases, formulation changes make sense. That's how you don't end up there. Because the thing that nobody asked really is why? Like, why is it that in 2005 it was $120 a month average for a yoga membership? In 2010, it's $99 a month, and then it basically stays there until at least 2020.
Your cost didn't go down.
Yeah, how does that happen? I mean, I actually know some reasons why that would happen, but like what an interesting thing to contemplate, because what do we learn from that? And now if you own a studio today and we're moving forward, how do you avoid that trap? So price adjustments. I don't know, Terry, kick us off. What periodic increase, fall maybe
Periodic
would be a
increase.
good time? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
fall, yeah, because we were talking about that. Fall could be a good time. We don't have to wait till the first of the year. Why not get it all set if you are contemplating a price adjustment, or like we say, pricing optimization, is the fall can be a good time to do it because then it's all done and ready to roll. It's all already there when the new year hits and you get that, the January bump kind of thing. I will just put this out there if you're listening now. This is July 30th that we're recording this, is that in August, I will be doing a workshop series on pricing, a specific thing. I will be doing a workshop series in our community, in Artha community, about where do you even start? Why would I do this? How do I start? What does it look like? How do I roll it out? All of that stuff. So I will just be doing a workshop on that. So if you're, want to join the community, and you can check that out. And then in terms of, I'll start with just like the periodic adjustments is, yeah, on an annual basis, if you bump up, and here's the other thing that I think is really fascinating in the fitness world, we're so obsessed over like, 119, 129, or the fives, like 120, 125. Remember, you can have a price go up from, to $123 or $137, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like these round numbers. I always kind of think that's sort of interesting. And I do remember there, again, another client we have is they had built into their contract, their membership agreement. Like if at the annual, if someone stayed on it for a year, at the end of that year, when it would renew the next year, it automatically went up like 3.5%. It adjusted for like inflation. And it was just written into the contract. And then if you were on that membership every year, it would just go up by whatever factor. So I thought that was a really brilliant way to do it. And then that way, and so that meant that some people were paying, $135.36, and some people were paying $132. Some people were paying 100 more, but it just meant that those went up. And then also every year, their new prices would be, they would raise their prices a little bit. Sometimes not a lot, sometimes not a little. And then I'm just going to straight up say, raise your drop-in. Anybody listening, if you haven't raised your drop-in in a while, raise your drop-in. Raise your drop-in, raise your 10-pack. You can always raise those. So yeah, so I'll just say that, yeah.
The thing that was, well, you kind of just said this, like not really outside of the box, but I don't hear people talking about this, and we coach towards this, is what you just said, and we've seen this. I've done it at a few businesses where definitely in the contract, subject to change is like the minimum sentence structure that has to be in there, but you can peg it to something. And so we've seen that where it's like we raise prices annually and it's based off of inflation. Like the raise isn't a percent or something else, although we've seen that like it goes up 2% a year, whatever, because you could average it out and figure out a good number for that. But they just say like whatever inflation is, that's what we raise the price by, period. And that's it. And then they reset their public price accordingly. And the old school thing that would happen in membership studios is the whole word grandfathered. You're grandfathered in on that or whatever. Like that's one of the things that it's still out there, but I wouldn't say it died with COVID, but COVID like cut most of that out. It was the most common thing, and now I would never have that come out of my mouth in in a business. It just you can't. It's just really shoots you in the foot. And so, but an outside of the box thing you could do is you have that prices go up, but the members who stay on membership, the amount that theirs go up is less. And so if like prices raise 4% in a year, theirs only goes up 2. And so they do have the preferred rate. Or the other way that we would say that, so it's less complex, is we don't guarantee that your price doesn't go up, but we guarantee that if you stay on membership, you will get our best rate on that membership.
The perfect. Yeah, I was going to say that's the way
You'll
you
get
can
the
solve
preferred
that.
rate, and
The
so you always
preferred
have
rate.
like 2 tiers, and that can lead to a lot of confidence and help with price retention, etc. The other thing I was going to say though is I think sometimes we get a little confused on raising prices and what to do or whatever else, and when do you restructure versus when do you do a straight raise versus when do you like add or subtract something, etc. And this is not a rule by any means. It's just like a starting thought prompt. The idea would be 1 year you raise prices straight. So your pricing strategy stays exactly the same, but prices go up. The next year, the dollar amount stays the same, but what you get for the dollar amount changes. So you adjust the details inside of the price, which effectively creates a price shift without you publicly advertising a higher dollar amount. And then the third shift in the third year is you restructure, maybe not entirely, but you restructure something in the pricing. You change the offers themselves altogether, and then the process repeats. And if I go back, over the last 10, 15 years of coaching and look at like what have we done in the studios that have grown from, to 300,000 to 1,500,000 or whatever, it's in some fashion that is the path that we've been on. That it's like there's just straight raises at moments because the structure makes sense. now we have a supply and demand shift, so we're leaving the prices the same, but we're going to restructure what you get for it. And then there's like, we need to just add a completely new option because we have a different avatar or a different way that we want to sell the thing or a different formulation of what it is, whatever, whatever. So when we say like adjust pricing, those are the three levers. You could look at it that way and say like year one, two, three, and that's your macro pricing plan of how you're going to adjust. You could pre-decide that.
Another effective strategy too, and we've done this, we've coached clients through this as well, is billing cycles, right? Instead of billing, a lot of studios business membership is they bill monthly, but if you bill every 4 weeks, you now effectively have a price increase
Yeah.
because instead of 12 payments in a year, you get 13 payments in a year.
It's an
So I've
8% increase in price
Yeah, so that
for the same
could
dollar
be
amount.
for the same dollar amount, and that like what
Yeah.
you were talking about for Josh for the same dollar amount. So I've had clients do that, and in the year it's like, okay, we're just going to shift the billing to every 4 weeks. Then the next year we can raise it up. So it's sort of like you can do it that way. And like you said, with like preferred pricing, and that's especially I think important because I've seen this with founders memberships. You get the grandfathered into this founders rate, and I have some long-term studios that's how they did it, and they have founders that are paying like $799 for a year
Oh,
because that was
I've got one right now. They have a group of 10 members who are paying $550 for an annual. Their current
yeah,
rate is 1,500.
yeah. So
It's a
that's where you
third
got
of
to
the
be,
price.
yeah, yeah, you got to
Yeah.
be, that's where you got to be thinking forward thinking about. And that's where that's like, hey, this is our founder's rate. You will always get a preferred founder's rate, even into the future kind of thing. And I had a client was like, she wanted to raise the prices. And I was like, well, what? And a bunch of members. And I said, well, what is their contract? And she said, well, that they would get this rate as long as they stayed on the plan. And I'm like, yeah, I said she was adamant. She did it. She was going to do it. I can't remember what was the outcome of that, but I was like, well, yeah, you could do it. But then if they come to you and say, wait a second, she said, well, I'll just deal with that when that happens. I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
exactly, I couldn't talk her off of that strategy and again, at the end of the day, it's her business. So she gets to decide what she wants to
Well,
do.
and
But I was just like,
you got to make hard decisions in your business. You might have to do that.
yeah, you
That,
might, and
that's the
yeah,
truth. And if you're looking at it future forward, those are the things you want to do is prevent yourself from being trapped, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another one is most people, if we look at the average of any class-based business, like boutique fitness wellness, Pilates, HIIT, yoga, whatever, the average practice rate per week is like 1.7 across the industry. It's like, let's say two. If we look at that monthly, that means it's eight or less. It's like 7 times in a month. When you own the business or manage the business, and I say, how often do people practice? The person that comes to mind is the person who practices 4 or 5 days a week
You see them every day. Yeah.
because you see them all the time. And so you over index the number of people who are practicing at that high frequency. Your median client is practicing much less. The clients themselves lie about this too. If you were to just ask them, how often do you practice? They're going to say, I practice like 2, 3 times a week. Go look at their history. And half of them that have said that actually practice 1, 2 times a week. So on a weekly basis, it's not a stretch, but now you take that over a year and they've practiced like half as much as they think they're practicing. And so this is a weird, like cognitive issue of like a weird sort of cognitive dissonance almost of like what is actually happening that we can track in the data versus what are people doing. The point being, the average median client in most boutique fitness and wellness, let's say your price, we'll use easy numbers, is $100 a month for an unlimited membership. If you change that and say it's $100 a month, but now you get 3 days a week, it's a 12 time a month pass, which I hate the formulation of that wording, and there's reasons for it. That's a different conversation. But you would pay the same $100 for the 3 days a week. because I think I'm going to practice 2-3. I actually practice 1-2. That's your median client. Very few people take the fourth class in the week, and way less people take the fourth class in the week times all 4 weeks and end up at like 16 times in a month. That's a very small group of people, way smaller than you think it is on average. And so for them, they could be paying a higher price for a truly unlimited. So structurally, like that shift is a bit weird, but when you have, this is another example of a structural shift where, especially if you have more of a supply and demand adjustment, where like classes are full and we have to sort of limit things. But if you think about, if you have 5 classes a day and they put 10 people in every class, you have 50 spots that you can sell. If you sell me an unlimited, I could practice every day. So your hypothetical inventory then is whatever, the 50 memberships. Everyone practice once a day. If it's 3 days a week, I could practice twice in the week then. And then there can be 2 groups in the week. You literally double your available capacity selling that membership instead without increasing your classes or the physical size of your room. And so this is what we're talking about, where pricing strategy number one is about sales, because people don't buy your price. Your price backs up your sales conversation. They buy transformation and value. Number two, though, it's like this is how you create cash flow, because that's the first thing you've got to solve. Then it's profitability and lifetime value. And then it has these other levers structurally where it helps you with your supply and demand and your capacity and your efficiency and et cetera, et cetera. And they're not major levers, but just looking at them really from a place of what am I solving for? This is something to play with. The irony of it is that my experience has been most owners way fucking over index their focus on pricing. They really thought, oh, if my intro was this instead of that, I would get more people in the doors. Oh, if I just charge a little less money here, people would stay on longer. Or if I charged more there, I would make more money, whatever. And they're way over indexed this like hyper fixation on price adjustments to do other things in the business. And that's not how that works. And they completely miss these pieces of the puzzle. Of like, yeah, you could charge. We had a studio once, they were charging $50 a month for membership. They had 800 members as a result of it, which was great. They were losing money every month. Like, you have 800 members and you're losing money. That's a pricing strategy problem. Like, you literally cannot afford to sell someone this membership at $50 with your expense rate. As soon as we looked at it, and they ended up quitting coaching, honestly, because we got stuck on this point. It was one of the very few times in my coaching career where I'm like, the entire like structure of what you're doing will just, all the other stuff we're working on is going to amplify this problem. You can't even service another 500 members. Your market probably doesn't have another 500 members for you. So, but if you refuse to change this price, even not even the existing people, at least moving forward, so it starts moving that direction, then like, I don't know what we're going to do. The equation doesn't work.
That's interesting. I coached a client with, she's in an enviable position where classes are like 80-90% full 80-90% of the time. And also in a situation where, and very strategic, and I support the owner on this decision. She's like, I cannot add any more classes to schedule. I don't have enough teachers, and I am not going to teach those classes. Which I was like 100%. That's one of the last things you want to do is load up yourself as the owner with, if this is the only way. So when we looked at adjusting her pricing and she did have the unlimited, and a lot of people were using that. So what we did there, to your point, Josh, is we kept the unlimited price, which was, I can't remember, I think it was 150. They're over in the UK, so it was 150 euro. But we moved it to 8 times a month. So that twice a week, because we looked at it, just exactly what you described. Then we added an unlimited that's like 198 euro a month. significantly more. And then basically what we offered the people when we did it is like, here's the new pricing structure. You can stay on this. It's 8 times a month, or if you want the truly unlimited. And nobody canceled. The majority of the people just went with the 8 times a month. And then she had a handful of people that upgraded because, like, no, I want this. I want the ability to do the unlimited. And then the other thing we did with the unlimited is we added a couple, like the 100, we added a couple extra little perks that they got that nobody else got. So then we made that like that unlimited, like truly like a premium package where, yes, you're paying the most per month. However, you're getting these additional perks. And some of them were simple, like they had a little bit longer booking window. They could book out ahead of other, some of those things that sometimes it's not about, it's more about the ability to book the class or get the classes they want. So that's the other thing is like keep the prices. And I had another client one time, it's like they kept their 10 class card the same price, but they went from a 10 class to an 8 class. So they kept the price the same. They just reduced the number of classes that you get for that same price. So those are some other interesting things that you can do when it comes to pricing as well. Because just because you've been doing it a certain way for years and years doesn't mean you have to stay doing that away forever and a day, Josh.
Well, and to the point that you're making in another way, price, as we just stated, price backs up the sales conversation. If you have your pricing strategy correct, your sales are easier because it just makes sense. And the simplest example of this is like an intro pass at a yoga studio. If it's $25 for a single class and you're going to sell me a $40 1 month unlimited pass, it's just a no-brainer. Like, why would you not do that? Still, people don't, which is amazing. You still have to sell it to them. But it creates the scenario where the conversation feels almost necessary for me to make sure you know about this and we discuss it. And it creates a scenario where you should probably consider it because why wouldn't you? It doesn't make sense. If you're going to come back at all, why would you not do that sort of thing? So people don't buy your price, but it creates consideration and it backs up context and reason for certain sales conversations, etc. As well. The other thing that I would throw into the mix here is why raise your prices? Now, you could just say like to make more money, which that sounds weird for some people to say. Yeah, that is why, and there's nothing actually wrong with that in business. The fastest way to double your income is to double your price, theoretically. Now, there's a price elasticity problem where you're going to price yourself out of a market or people don't want to pay the higher price. But why raise your prices? Part of what was missed in the larger wellness industry, especially in the yoga industry, in that story of like prices didn't change 2010 to 2020 pretty much, is no one made the calculation or no one like really looked at it through the lens of almost ethically, if you run a business, you should charge the maximum possible price you can charge for your product that still gets you the volume of people that you need to support your business. That's price elasticity. There's a method to it, but we maybe won't go down that rabbit hole. Because if you charge anything less than that, it's not just that you would make less money or less margin or whatever else. It's that that is devaluing your product. You actually train people to look at it as less valuable. And there's a direct correlation between the price of something and the perceived value of something in the cognitive science of this whole thing. Like, very well studied. And so the idea is just you should charge as high as possible because it actually it like literally actually makes your product better. One, two, why would you not? Like, why not have more margin, more cash flow, more buffer, more whatever for all the other things that your business has to operate on? And it might not be as big as you think. If you sell a $10 item and you sell 1,000 of them, and then you're going to make whatever, $600 profit on it. But if you sell same item for $12 and you only sell 900 of them, or let's do 190, I did the calculation here. $10 at 100 units, you do $1,000. $12 at 90 units, you do 1,080. So you sell 10 less, but you make $80 more, and maybe you end up profiting because of your margin 600 to 720. Like, why would you not do that? Basically, at some point, going for those extra 10 people doesn't advantage you, the business, or your customer service, etc. The studio where I was saying they had $50 membership and all of these members, one of the weird things, and I've seen it a few times, but this was one of the times that it was heavy. The wear and tear and maintenance on that studio was unfucking believable. They had a full cleaning crew. They had two people on every shift at the desk. They had in the 12 years they were open had replaced the flooring in the yoga space itself 2 times, and we're talking about a third. Like most studios don't even look at it for the first 10 years, let alone actually do it. And you can think the bathrooms, the water bill, the electrical, like all of these things were all way higher proportionally versus a comparable studio because of how much traffic was going through. And so traffic is good, and it's rare that I would say that the traffic is a problem in a business, like good problem to have. But in this case, because the pricing strategy was off, and they then created so much traffic that all their expense load, their margin actually shrunk as well on the whole business. Their P&L looked terrible. That's why they're losing money. And so it was a weird scenario where, to the point of this price elasticity, 100 to 90, they would have been better off selling less people at a higher price. They would have made more revenue, but they also would have had much higher profit on the other side because it would have lowered this other wear and tear expense amongst other things as well. And that's the game that you're playing. You play that game over time. You can't make that calculation. Like if you're going to open a business tomorrow, you can't make that calculation perfectly, in my opinion, and then be like, yep, got it. We'll just stay like this forever. That's not how that works. You like have to actually think about it, look at it, get the data, test it, adjust. So the original point, why even think about changing or raising your prices? Because it's something you should optimize in your business and functionally supports other things. And because, like, business ethically, I'm going to say you should charge the maximum you can for your product within reason so you don't deter everyone, because that gives you the most advantaged position to do all the other things that you need to do in the business, to give the raise to the person, to hire the other person that you want to help manage this, to
Pay
whatever else, to offer
yourself,
the customer service, to pay yourself, all the
to pay
things.
yourself. Yeah, all the things. Yeah.
I'm gonna say this harshly just to harp on the point today or whatever, but like if you are willing to say out loud to another human being, I don't pay myself, or I don't pay myself enough for my business, and then in the next sentence say that you don't want to or won't raise your prices, good
Why?
luck with your life.
Good
Yeah,
luck
good
with your
luck with your
life. Yeah.
business. Like, good luck with your business. I don't know. You have to reconcile that. It's not about it being harsh. It's not about like get to the bottom of what that tension is and find a path to solve it. It's not correct for me to say like just get over it, although sometimes that's helpful for people. Like whatever that tension is, you've got to figure something out. You are stuck. I don't even need to know what's going on in your business at that point. If you say that to me, you're in what we call the silent martyr category. I already know.
Just think Cher slapping Nicolas Cage across the face and saying, "Get over it." In what the God, now I can't think of the name of the movie. You know the name of the movie I'm talking
I know
about?
this. I know the scene. I don't know the movie name. Which one is it?
Actually, Olympia Dukakis is in it. I'm gonna write. I have to know. Cher and Nicolas Cage movie. Something about the moon. Moonstruck. Something about the moon. All right. I think based on that, because if Terry is going off talking about movies and quotes, it's time. I think it's a wrap. I think it's a wrap for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundup. As always, it's been super fun hanging out with everybody. And so tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to our show on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. And it's called The Weekly Roundup. Somebody was asking me about that. So if you look to Google or put in the search The Weekly Roundup, will pop up. And, like and subscribe, stay tuned, reach out if you're interested in joining our community. And also, we do still have spots in our annual Visionary Summit happening in Mexico, November 8th through the 13th. If you really want to get your business on track and dialed in and just teed up for success in 2027, please let us know. We'd be happy to jump on a call and chat about that, as well as a momentum audit. So that's it for this week, everybody. We'll see you. Bye.